Bit of a technical mess up this morning. I blame Tony. Why not? It's always easy to deflect blame. Actually, in all seriousness, Tony has been incredibly helpful, certainly to me, in the first few months. So, if you haven't already, give him a little pat on the back. Not too hard, though. Hello to all the visitors. Special welcome to you. It's our job to make you feel that you're the most important person here. So if we're not doing that, please let us know. And I don't know if anyone's mentioned, there's food after the lesson today, after the service. So please stay for that. There's food after the free food. Free food. Let me first start. Quick story about 3 athletes who were about to be executed. One was a soccer player, one was a tennis player, one was a football player. So the guard brings the soccer player up, says, "Do you have any last requests?" He says, "No." And the executioner says, "All right, very well." He goes, "Ready, aim." And then the soccer player yells, "Earthquake!" Everybody looks up, freaks out, and he escapes. So now it's the tennis player's turn. They bring the tennis player up. He said, "Sir, do you have any last requests?" He says, "No." "Very well." The executioner goes, "Ready, aim." He goes, "Tornado!" Everybody looks around, and he escapes. So by now, the football player, he's got this all figured out. He's in great shape. So they bring him up, and they ask him, "Do you have any last requests?" He says, "No." "Very well." And the executioner says, "Ready, aim," and the football player yells, "Fire!" Wait for it. 5 minutes from now, you'll be like, "Oh, wait, yes." Start anyway. The bottom line is this. We all try to escape, don't we? We've all been there. We have not all been on the firing line for execution, I don't believe. But we've all been there. Try to escape the guilt that we feel from some of the poor decisions we've made in life. Or maybe we try to escape reality by having that 1 or 2 extra drinks, or maybe taking some medicine that we really don't need. We've been there. And even Christians, we avoid God. We try to escape our circumstances, if you will, as parents, as children, as brothers in the church, as employees. This is what we do. You probably don't remember, the second time I came here to visit, I preached on the prophet Isaiah, chapter 6, verses 1 through 8. And the name of the lesson that day was, "Here Am I, Send Me." If you remember, God was looking for Isaiah to help out. He said, "Whom shall we send? Who will go for us?" And Isaiah volunteered. He says, "Here am I, send me." Today, we're going to get into the introduction of a man named Jonah. And his attitude was the exact opposite. "Here am I. Send the other guy. Send someone else." That's what we're going to talk about. Probably about 8 weeks. There's 4 chapters of Jonah. It's really exciting. I think you will really enjoy it. Today's going to serve as more of an introduction. We'll look at the first few verses. So whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Now, I'm sure every person here recognizes that picture. Good old VeggieTales, as all the kids are laughing. I'm not here to knock VeggieTales. I love VeggieTales. But boy, they have done a great job distorting the story of Jonah. It's not necessarily a whale, people. For one thing, don't think it is. It might be. It really doesn't matter, does it? And the other thing, there's so many almost fictitious, you could say, aspects to Jonah's journey. But don't miss the point. Let me give you a couple quotes. The first is from an author by the name of Brian Estelle. He says, "Reading Jonah is like standing before a great mountain. And like great mountains, great books command respect." Then theologian E.J. Young quotes, "The fundamental purpose of the book of Jonah is not found in its missionary or universalistic teachings. It is rather to show that Jonah being cast into the depths of Sheol and yet brought up alive is an illustration of the death of Christ for sins not his own and of his resurrection." So, when we read the Old Testament, I'm going to repeat this later, we really need to work hard to see Jesus on every page. One other thing you need to do is try to understand, where is Israel here? Where does Israel's role fit in the whole story? Remember, the Bible, above all else, is a story. Jesus himself validates the story when he talks to his people in Matthew 12, 39, 40, to illustrate his own death and his resurrection. Let us not forget, no matter what you think of Israel and the state of Israel and their relationship with the Palestinians, that's a different story for a different day. There's no disputing that they were God's people. Certainly in the Old Testament times, they were his chosen, and that relationship is the key to us understanding what the Old Testament is all about. So I ask, why is Jonah, who is a Jewish prophet, by the way, called to go up to a Gentile nation? It's almost like Judah, or I'm going to do this a lot, you have to forgive me. Jonah and Judah are not the same, not by a long shot. Jonah represents Israel, and Nineveh, who we're going to look at in a little bit, really represents the Gentiles. Above all else, Jonah is a book that's layered with mercy. I have to remember, and we probably know this if you've ever studied Paul at all, are the Jewish people the only ones who are supposed to inherit the kingdom of God? Yeah, we hope not, right? Or else we'd be in trouble. Don't you think Paul talked to the Gentiles as well? Jesus wants us all saved. This is why God told Jonah to go up to Nineveh in the first place. So let me just slow down for a second before we even get into the story. What do we know about Jonah? Honestly, not a lot. He was born in the 8th century BC in a town called Gath-Hepher, which is not that far from where Jesus was born, by the way. Let's see, he was the son of Amittai. He lived near Cana in Galilee, actually. And his name means dove. He was a minor prophet. Now listen, kids, because I know you've all been asking me this before we started today. How many minor prophets are there? A dozen. That's right. So you have no excuses not to answer Carolyn's question this morning. Now, he is known as a minor prophet. Does that mean that the minor prophets, well, it's really not that important, and that Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Daniel are more important? Of course not. That wouldn't make sense. Really, all that means is the length of the book. Nothing more. So when we talk about prophets, perhaps when you think of a prophet, you think of someone telling the future to a bunch of people. Not necessarily. There were more forthtelling than foretelling. What I mean is this. Jonah, and really most of the people up there, would go into a town and talk to the people about, A, what was going on right now, and B, what you need to do for repentance. A great example is Amos. I don't know if you're familiar with Amos. Amos was actually from the southern kingdom of Judah. He was called to go to the northern kingdom of Israel and preach to them and tell them what you're doing is wrong. And the problem with that, of course, was everything they were doing from the outside at that point looked right. It seemed right. So how do you think they welcomed Amos during that time? Not very well. And we're going to see, this is probably why Jonah was none too excited to answer God's call. A few more tidbits about Jonah. It's the only prophetic book that is chiefly about the prophets more than the message. Very interesting. It's the only book of the latter prophets cast in narrative form. Jonah is the only minor prophet in whose career the miraculous is so prominent. Jonah is the only minor prophet, whose career is on foreign soil and who preaches exclusively to foreign people. And last, he's the only Old Testament person mentioned to have taken a journey on the Mediterranean Sea. We know that Paul did that in the New Testament time. I see Jonah, there are 4 chapters. It's a book about running. I don't mean in the track and field sense. In chapter 1, you see Jonah running away from God. In the 2nd chapter, you see him running toward God. That's when he's in the fish. In the 3rd chapter, he is running with God in obedience. And in chapter 4, he's really kind of running ahead of God because he is so disappointed with the mercy that God shows toward wicked Nineveh. And again, this is just an overview. You don't need to remember all this right now. But definitely store it away. If you're wondering, Jonah is between Obadiah and Micah. So let's just read the first 3 verses today of the first chapter. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that port. After paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord. We'll stop there today. So, the word of the Lord. If you're familiar with the Old Testament, specifically the prophets, that probably sounds very familiar. Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Joel, Micah, so forth and so on. You see that actually the Hebrew audiences were very familiar with this beginning. They saw it some 100 times in the Old Testament. While most prophets received words or messages, what did Jonah receive from God? He received directions. And oh, by the way, they were explicit and they were pretty simple. We'll get to that in a moment. Nineveh. What do we know about Nineveh? We talked a little bit today about Babylon. And Tom, where was that here again? Put you on the spot.
Not far from Baghdad.
Okay. So Nineveh is in the present-day Iraq area. It's actually about 200 miles from Baghdad. It's about 500 miles from Jonah's hometown. So he was far, but not incredibly far. Very impressive city in regard to size and stature. But boy, despite being the capital of the entire Syrian Empire, they made Sodom and Gomorrah pale in comparison. Let me give you some ideas. They plotted evil against the Lord in Nineveh. Cruelty, plundering, and more prostitution, witchcraft, commercial exploitation. I read somewhere that they could be described as an overwhelming septic tank. I don't know about you, but I would not want to be part of a city or a community that was described as an overwhelming septic tank. Another prophet, Nahum, describes it this way. This is in chapter 3, 3 and 4. Charging cavalry, flashing swords and glittering spears, many casualties, piles of dead, bodies without number, people stumbling over the corpses, all because of the wanton lust of a harlot, alluring the mistress of sorceries, who enslaved nations by her prostitution and peoples by her witchcraft. And that's where Jonah's supposed to go and talk? God seems to concern himself with these wicked nations, with these pagan nations, does he not? And you're probably thinking, well, thank goodness. I live in the good old US of A, where we don't have any of these problems. Really? Let me tell you something. The more that we kick God out of our public conscience, guess what we become more and more like? We become a modern-day Nineveh. So I ask you, Christian, what is your role in this? What is your role in getting us closer to what God wants and further away from what the world wants? More on that. So Jonah, no doubt, he knew about the depravity of Nineveh. Very simple instruction. Go to Nineveh and preach against it. I underline the word go, which is the single most important word in this entire book. Go. Do it. Okay? It's go. It's an action word. It's a very simple one. We live in a world now where at least for me, some of the directions we get through the mail, the instructions are very complicated. We just bought something to put a TV stand up, and the directions, there were no words. It was just pictures. That does not work for me. Well, I can't bend my body in these positions. It's insane. Or there used to be a time, kids, when GPS did not exist. And you would have to use this thing called a map. Yes. Or even worse than that, you'd stop at a gas station and say, hey, how do I get to the freeway? And they'd say, go this way, that way, and the other way, and you'd end up in Canada. And who knows what happened. This was not like that. He had one thing to do. Go and preach against Nineveh. But he got up. He got up all right, but he fled. Not a good idea. Isn't a prophet supposed to obey God? Elijah was not perfect. But I'll read this. This is 1 Kings 17, 2-5. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah. Leave here, turn eastward, let's talk about eastward this morning, and hide in the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have directed the ravens to supply you with food there. So he did what the Lord had told him. He went to the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan and stayed there. There was a woman who called her husband. Her husband happened to be driving. He was out on the road. And she said, honey, I just heard the news. And apparently some madman is driving the wrong way on the highway. And he pauses and says, listen, they're all driving the wrong way. Wait for it. We have to make sure we're going, but we also need to make sure we're going in the right direction. He says to Jonah, does God, go. Jonah therefore says, no. Okay, you kids out there, when mom and dad ask you to do something, you say yes or no. Okay, you're all going to be funny and say no. But we know what the answer should be. Or if you're a student, your teachers ask you to do something, you do it. If you're working, if you're in the quote-unquote real world, and the boss or your supervisor tells you to do something, you do it. Or else you find yourself receiving unemployment. You see, that's the way the world works. And I'm not so sure Jonah even understood, I've got to obey God. And that's a whole lot more important than anything else, any of the other examples that I just gave. Get up and go became, I got up and fled. Like the anti-Isaiah. And I always like to wonder what God's perspective is during this. He's probably watching this saying, listen, Jonah, we're going to do this with or without you, okay? We're going to do this the easy way or the hard way. And it's almost like at this point, he's kind of nudging his son, Jesus Christ, saying, you see, son, you see all this? This is why I need to send you to clean up this mess that's going on. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I said. It's insane. You've got 500 miles. All right, he went to Joppa by this point, did Jonah. He had to go to Nineveh, 550 miles, okay? So instead of going 500 miles kind of northeast, what did he do? He went 2,500 miles to the west, to the other end of the earth, an obscure town called Tarshish, which was in southern Spain. It was kind of a town where a Phoenician mining colony. Why in the world would you go there? It's amazing the lengths that we go to. Let me give you some perspective in modern day. On the right, you've got the beautiful city of Philadelphia. You may have heard that Michelle and I are from there. Anyway, so let's say you're in Philadelphia, and God says, I need you to go to Bangor, Maine, and go talk to some people for me. Okay, Maine's about 500 miles away. It's a relatively simple one-day cruise. But I say, you know what? No, I'm going to go 2,500 miles west. And what a coincidence. Look where that gets me. Vegas. Vegas is Sin City. Nineveh was really Sin City. You see what I'm saying here? Can we really escape God? The psalmist knows the answer is no. 139th Psalm, verses 7 through 12. Let me read this. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there, your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become night around me. Even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. So I've basically spent the last few minutes knocking Jonah. But we've all been in his sandwich before, have we not? We've all thought, well, the grass is always greener on the other side. Well, I think we all know the grass is not always greener on the other side. There are two paths. One is of obedience for God's will for you. The other one is of disobedience. One of my charges to you this week, take the road left.